Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode. We're happy to see you joining us again. Welcome to Under Investigation, Stories Beyond the Badge.
We're not seeing anybody.
Yeah, that's true. I see you.
You said happy to see you.
Well, I'm happy to see the numbers streaming the podcast.
There we go. Okay, that's much better.
I had to make that up. I had to recover very quickly.
Right.
So, well, I am your host, Mike, and of course, joining me is can I call you my sidekick? No? Co-host.
Yeah.
I think we've discussed this before.
It makes me seem like an episode of Fantasy Island, like the little guy on the tattoo.
The plane boss.
That's what you think is sidekick.
Okay. Brant doesn't want to be known as the sidekick.
No, not necessarily.
All right. Well, again, thanks for joining us. We've got a whole lot of smorgasbordy type stuff to talk about today.
We have a whole lot of nothing, but we're going to make it into something. That's how we're going to do it.
Join us for nothingness.
That is. Well, because those of you listening have not sent ideas in, so we're like, if you could send some ideas in, that would give us more things to not talk about.
That sounds like a desperate plea for topics.
I'll take what I can get.
All right.
So
what you been up to?
What do we got going since our last? A little bit of this, a little bit of that. I think the big thing we got a big push on coming up end of the year. Into the first of the year, we've always got. I'm for those of that follow or listen to where I'm at is I'm an instructor at one of the colleges, and we teach the law enforcement skills program. And we're busy, which is a good problem to have. I mean, it's we saw a definite big decline at the college for a while there. Our numbers were, I don't want to say low. I mean, they were low, but they weren't like, I wouldn't say like drastically low, but definitely a decline. And I think we're seeing now those numbers are coming back up, and we've got other agencies, the State Patrol, and Minneapolis and other agencies now that are starting their cadet programs. It's kind of becoming a new thing now, these cadet programs, which honestly, I think they're genius, because I think it gives agencies an opportunity to put eyes and ears on someone before they actually are offering them a job, to know kind of what they're getting. Now, there's a little bit of a financial investment in them, because they're bringing them people on, they're hiring them, and then they're paying them to go through skills. These are commonly people that usually maybe have degrees in something else, and they just had to get the skills portion to become post-eligible or things like that. But I think it plays well because agencies are getting a chance to like physically have these people around their agency and have them there as kind of like almost a hybrid CSO. But they get to kind of really get a good vibe and a good feel of like, is this person going to be a good fit for our agency? Where in years past, we're just kind of, you send them through a couple interviews and you're kind of going off what we think this person will or will not be a good fit, and see how it goes. But so we've been doing, so it's been busy at the college, doing a lot of teaching, doing a lot of educating I used to say educating the youth, but I got to be honest, we have all age ranges that are going through skills right now. We have people that are making, career changes, that in their, they did, 15, 20 years at their desk job, and they decide now they want to go out and they want to be in law enforcement, and they're making changes. And I God bless them. I don't know if I would want to be doing that in my 40s, but okay.
So I got a couple questions for you. So first of all, how long have you been teaching there, roughly?
I've been there. I want to say, I'd have to go back and like double check my numbers, but I want to say I've been teaching there. I think March or April this year will be 10 years I've been teaching there. I started out role playing, and that was probably, if I had to ballpark it, 2009, 2010.
So you've been there long enough and you'll see where I'm going here. So we'll call it the pre-George Floyd era.
Well, you can call it that. That's exactly what you can call it.
So what have you noticed? What have you seen? So what were the numbers like pre-George Floyd era compared to what happened post, and then now where are we at now?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, pre-George Floyd, we had we had waiting lists to get into skills. So part of that was too is that um, we were limiting how many students, how many classes, whereas now we still have those regular classes, and then we're making special accommodations for other, for these IC Poet, which is a state funded program to get more people into law enforcement. And so there's a lot of different programs that are out now that we're making these, because it's kind of branched off. So instead of just having your, morning, afternoon, and night skills class, you now have a branch off of, we're doing more with other agencies, allowing them to bring in their own people, kind of a thing. And then, so we're adding more classes with the post board making their changes on other things they want us to teach, and adding those in, and wanting to put more hours into certain things and stuff like that. That changes things as well. So
curious, what mandatory things are the post board? What are they pushing out compared to when you and I went through
I like
years and years ago?
lots and lots. So from when you and I went through, to give you an idea, when we went through, to give you, just the one that pops, because it's one of the classes I teach. But when we went through skills, or we went through, I went through a 2-year program, and when I went through the 2-year program, we had a semester of traffic. Like, that was traffic enforcement. We had a radar unit, we had a unit on the vehicles, and I mean, we went out. I mean, we had an actual, we did scenarios and things like that. But we had a
so did we.
semester long unit that did that. Now they get, scenario wise, they get 1 day of lecture, and they get 5 days of scenarios. That's it.
That seems backwards, because I mean, that's the bread and butter of law enforcement.
And then we do 1 day of lecture for high risk traffic stops, and then we do 1 day of practical for high risk traffic stops.
All right, I'm sorry. I'm going to stop you there. And not that I'm disagreeing with what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I think of like all your high risk incidents that we are involved in, or things that can go south very quickly, are traffic stops. So why is it that the state, or maybe the state's not saying that, but the school's having to respond because of other mandatory things?
We get this many hours to teach. We get this many hours. And so,
wow. So you're
we
sacrificing
haven't made skills any longer. I mean, it's still,
but here's the point that I'm getting at. We're sacrificing the bread and butter of law enforcement because of all these other mandatory topics that are being pushed or required by the state now.
Yeah. And don't quote me on exactly what class or classes that were added. But I know, like, the Minnesota State Patrol added an extra 2 weeks to their academy up at Camp Ripley because of some of the mandatory training that we as law enforcement, for their in-service and things like that. So they added an extra, I want to say 2 weeks to their trooper school, their rookie school, to get all that mandatory training in. The high risk traffic stuff. So I always have a little bit of a caveat with that. So I understand, actually, and I don't 100% disagree with this, but I understand why the high risk traffic stop is 1 day of lecture and 1 day of practical, only because today's modern high risk stops have changed so much, and different agencies are doing it different ways. We're teaching, we're teaching ways now where a lot of agencies are driving SUVs now, and they're teaching high risk stops from the back of the SUV.
We are.
Yep.
We are.
Yep. They're teaching, a lot of agencies are going away from that V formation, and they're going more to like it's more of like a tunnel formation, where the cars are just tied together. So I think the reason what we're doing at a skills level is, and this is kind of how, when I teach the class, I explain to the students, we are giving you just a glimpse or a snippet into the general procedures of high risk traffic stop. What we teach is what transitions you from what we would define as a textbook traffic stop, or a driving down the road, I see a violation, I make a traffic stop. What changes it from that to high risk? And that's really what we're focusing on is what do you do different when you run that plate and that vehicle comes back stolen? When you run that plate and the registry owner comes back with a warrant, or when you run that plate and there's a cops alert or something that's out there, what what transitions in their mind to get them from I'm making a traffic stop for a speed violation to I'm now making a traffic stop for what could potentially be a dangerous situation. We're focusing more on that mindset of getting their mind to switch gears, that they're not turning the lights on, making a traffic stop on a vehicle, walking up to the door when the driver's known to have a felony warrant or the vehicle's a stolen vehicle. Like we're just not walking up doing the whole, hi, I'm Officer so and so, blah, 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 you know.
So more on the decision points
Correct.
instead of the tactical side of it.
Correct. And we give them that tactic. We give them something, but we're not giving them all of it, right? We can't certainly give them all of that because there's just so many. We could literally spend weeks on high risk traffic stops because of all the different techniques and all the different procedures. And, okay, now we want you to do it with 2 officers because once you get, I mean, let's be honest, right? You and I both have talked about this before. You get outside the metro, right? I mean, you get to some of these rural counties, these small PDs. There's situations where it's going to be, maybe you and one other person, or it might be, you and 2 other people. So ideally, we'd love to start doing more of the skill stuff with, all right, it's you 2 go make a high risk traffic stop. What? Figure it out. This is how you're going to have to do it. Figure it out. And that's ideally, I think, is what what we want, or how we would want to project it, because you want to give those students like, hey, here's how it goes. The problem is you just don't have the time, right? I mean, we want to get the time to get everything in, but where do you cut? What we tell them is very much, you are getting tip of the sphere, first like glimpse, transition, get your mindset to transfer over. That's really what we're doing on the high risk stuff. In the practical stuff, it's same thing. Like, this is where my argument gets to come in, is that this is the one thing, and I don't care where you work. And I have these conversations with students all the time. You're going to do traffic stops. And inevitably, I'll get someone who's a cadet for Minneapolis, or they're a cadet for St. Paul, and they get well, not me, I'm going to Minneapolis. And I go, oh, really? So when you're responding to that assault call, and the suspect vehicle flees the scene, and as you're coming into the area, you see that suspect vehicle, are you going to make contact with that vehicle? Well, yeah. What's that called? Oh, that's right. It's called a traffic stop. Yeah. Or when you're responding to that, that burglary in progress, and as you pull up, you see a vehicle fleeing the area, and you don't know if it's related or not, you're going to go make contact with that vehicle, right? And that's
Well, you better.
It's called a traffic stop.
That's funny.
So it's stuff like that. And then when you
don't do traffic stops.
yeah,
here.
and that's but when you paint that picture though, when you paint that picture like that, then they go, oh yeah, and it's like, you do them. And actually, if anything, I tell them, you should be paying closer attention than anybody else, because while the rest of us are out making traffic stops for things like stop signs and speed, you're probably making contacts with these vehicles that are, involved in violent crimes or things like that.
So more likely high risk.
So there should be a little more, thought process into what you're doing, and when you make your approaches and when you make your contacts, and questions we're asking once we're up at the door, and things like that. And so we give them that, and then we give them the on the what we define as the misdemeanor side of things. And we try to give them those. I always try to give the students a little something more to kind of take away from the class that they wouldn't normally get, that they, those things that we learned, you learn from working the road. I teach them the driver's license trick, and I always tell people, so if you get someone hands you a Minnesota driver's license, and you walk up to the vehicle, they hand you a driver's license, and you feel like, it just seems really kind of thin, or it feels a little too thick to be a driver's license. And I always tell them, what's something you can do when you're standing there right there at the door? You haven't even turned to walk back to your car. What's something you can do right there at the door to make sure that that driver's license is a legit driver's license? And it's, and everybody's, well, the holograms and look for this. And then those are all things great. But if it's at 3 o'clock in the morning, you may or may not be able to see that hologram. And so the one trick that I actually learned, I had a student, oddly enough, and she was a dispatcher in Dakota County. And she said, you can just add the first 3 numbers together and they equal the last 2. And I was like, I'm sorry, what's that? And she said, in the state of Minnesota, on the new driver's licenses, if you add the first 3 numbers together, they will equal the last 2 digits of your driver's license number. And I thought it was genius.
Seriously?
Mm-hmm. If you had the first,
you can teach an old dog new tricks, because I was not aware of that.
if you,
I mean, as an investigator, I'll admit I'm not looking at driver's licenses a whole lot, but
yeah,
really,
yep. And on a Minnesota driver's
where's
license,
my driver's license at? I'm gonna look. But
on a Minnesota driver's license, if you had the first 3 numbers together, they'll equal the last 2.
we don't want to say this.
And
This is a secret.
Well, I caught it because this is when I was still working. And this was, like I said, this was years ago that she had told me this. And so I was still working the road. And sure enough, I made a traffic stop on her car, and this kid hands me his driver's license. And it actually was, it felt pretty decent, but I just happened to glance down at the driver's license, and he was under the age of 21. So anybody who's under the age of 21, their driver's license will start with 000. Pretty standard until, And sure enough, as I'm looking at his driver's license, the first 3 numbers say 000, and the last 2 numbers said 16. And I was like, wait a second. And so I looked at it and I said, do you want to hand me your real driver's license now? And the kid goes, what? And I said, do you want to hand me your real driver's license now? I go, this is a fake driver's license. And here's what it was, is he had a fake ID, and I'd stopped him for like a stop sign or something like that. It was really nothing too crazy, but he inadvertently handed me his fake ID.
Oops.
Instead of his real ID. And so he hands me his real driver's license, and they were identical. The only thing that was different was the date of birth was different, obviously, to make him 21, and the driver's license number was different. Otherwise, the photo, the address, everything was identical.
Wasn't the positioning of the photo itself in the wrong spot?
Mm-mm. I would challenge. Obviously, we seized it and it was entered into evidence, and things like that through our evidence. But I often would like, I would have liked to have it back, because I would challenge somebody, like, obviously, someone who has a lot of traffic and things like that would probably catch it. There were some nuances to it that were off just a little bit, but there were still holograms. Now, granted, they weren't the loon holograms, but they were holograms nevertheless within the license. So if you just took it and tilted it, looked at it in the light, you'd see a hologram. You wouldn't think twice about it.
Interesting.
There, like I said, there were some nuances to it. Oh yeah, technology is definitely done quite a bit.
I don't know if you intended to do that or not, but what a fantastic transition.
Well, I actually just thought about that when I said it. I was like, actually, we're going to talk about technology today.
Yeah. So let's do that. Let's switch gears slightly. It's not too terribly different, but things are different now. When I started, computers were not a thing. Well, that computers were, but not MDCs.
Nope.
For those who don't know what MDC is, it's mobile data computer, or MDT.
Yeah, they started as MDTs, yep, which was mobile data terminals,
because those were not smart. They were
correct,
text only, and those were tough. And the screens were really small.
Yes, and they were orange or green.
Yes, mine was green.
Yep.
Yeah, mine was green. So, so back when I started in '97, GIS. Things were not really integrated into law enforcement at the time, but I didn't have a computer. I remember my sheriff at the time when I was working, we had laptops, and he had given me a laptop, and I asked him to order a stand. So I got a Giotto desk. I still remember it to this day. Yeah, and as an equipment guy, you would know this.
Yes.
I had a Giotto desk, and I literally just had a commercial grade laptop, and it was mounted in my car. So I did have a computer in my car, but it wasn't connected. It literally had Word on it.
Yep.
And I did have GIS for the county upload like the 911 mapping system.
Yep. And then you had to have an air card that's shoved into the side of it.
I didn't have that. It was like, at the time it was probably a gig or
Oh,
two,
sure.
so I could type up an address. So it was really just a digital map. So instead of pulling the map off the visor, flipping it open, or better yet, the plat books,
Yep. Yep.
I had a plat book.
Yep.
And then when 911 calls would come out, they would give you the plat number, the page and the grid number, and
So you
then
could look it up.
So you could look it up.
Yep. Here's where I am.
And
Here's where I got to go.
I'm telling you now, when I was a field, and I'm kind of bouncing a little bit, but when I was a field training officer, I would frustrate my trainees because I would shut the computer off for a shift,
Mhm.
and I'd say, "No, what are you going to do when the computer system's down? What are you going to do when CAD is not working? You need to find this address." And they would like deer in the headlights. They were so dependent on GPS and
Oh, yeah.
mapping systems.
Well, I remember, and again, we go back to like, earlier in our careers type stuff. And I remember, and I will leave the agency name out of it for, to protect the innocent, but
Or the guilty.
yeah, or the guilty. But I remember doing a ride along with a buddy of mine, and he's now the chief of police, but I remember doing a ride along with him when he was just a patrol officer. And we were sitting there, and he said to me, like, we're driving around and we're doing this and we're doing that. And he was telling me about their FTO, and he's like, yeah, he says, we have a pretty high washout rate. He says, our we're pretty demanding to work here. And I was like, okay. And he said, yeah, he goes, you get your map for the first like month. They give you a map of the city. And then after that, they take your map away. And I was like, what? And keep in mind, this is for those that I mean, there's lots of cops out there right now shaking their head going, yep. Because we didn't have GPS on our computers. Like even
No.
when we got our computers and they were doing everything we needed them to do as far as like running plates and things like that, we didn't get GPS and mapping until
Oh, I'm guessing my agency now.
2010,
Yeah, I was going to say that about
2012.
somewhere right around there.
Before we actually started getting GPS tracking in our cars. And even then they weren't that accurate. It wasn't that accurate, but back then he would say, yep, you get your map for 2 weeks. And then they would tell people, you're encouraged to come in on your own time and go drive around and learn the city. And people were like, what? But I mean, I remember too, he would tell me like on FTO, they'd sit there and they'd go, all right, you got a blah, 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 blah call at this part of the city. Respond. And he's like, what? Well, just, is this how you're going to drive? You better go. They'd be running code to nothing calls
Oh, for training purposes?
for FTO purposes.
Boy, we'd never do that now.
You never to do that now. I'm surprised they did it then, even though.
Yeah, that's just an accident waiting to happen.
Oh, and how do you explain that accident when it happened? Because you're taking a brand new rookie officer, right? Who's new to the whole field anyway. You're putting them in a stressful situation because you're the field training officer sitting next to him. And you're telling them to respond to a call on the other side of town code to a call that doesn't really exist.
Yeah, you want to laugh about field training and technology in the early days. So again, like I said, I had a computer in my car, but I was the only one, and it was just literally, so and it wasn't even Microsoft Word, it was Word Perfect. I remember Word Perfect back in the day. And so I would type my reports and then just, copy and paste them,
Yeah.
or do whatever. Or they had templates, they had like PDF templates for some of our reports. But I remember what my FTO was? So currently, to kind of give people a picture, my current agency, our FTO program is 2 weeks administrative. So it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier with like the traffic stops and how do we do it?
Yep.
Right. So it's that 2 weeks of admin, and then you start in a squad, and then generally speaking, it can ebb and flow a little bit, but it's generally about 3 months of in the squad with another person. So compare that to when I started. Literally, day one of training for me was I went into the office, I signed all my paperwork, got quote unquote sworn in, was given my squad, my gun, all that. Literally, it's just like admin day.
Yep.
Signed my insurance, all that kind of stuff. Went out to the range, qualified. Day two, I was in the squad with my sergeant. He was my trainer, I guess, for lack of better terms. He knew of somebody who had a warrant. So we drove to this person's house. arrested them. So he wanted me to basically do all the paperwork, so I understood the arrest
Of
process.
course. Yeah.
Day 3, I was given to a shift partner and just rode around with him. I don't remember anything in particular that occurred on day 3. And then day 4, I was given to another shift partner. Again, nothing, nothing memorable occurred that I can remember. And then my 5th day, I was told to drive around, do not take any calls unless it was like a critical call, and simply learn the county.
Which I could get that. I mean, I can see that.
And that was it. And
It's-
then I had a phone. So here's my tie into technology. I had a phone, a bag phone.
Oh yeah.
I had a bag phone in my squad, and I was told to call if I had any questions. That was my field training for my first agency.
What year was that?
97.
So
1997 for you young folks.
yeah, there's a 19 in front of it.
Yes.
Um,
Before you were probably born.
mine, and I think maybe when we were talking about my career when we first started this, my first job was in northern Minnesota, small town, and my FTO was show up, and the chief, I had found a place to live, and the chief picked me up. He helped me find a place to live. Then he picked me up. I rode around the passenger seat. We drove around for about an hour.
Here's Bob's house. Here's Jeff's
Yep,
house.
here's where the council members live.
You're
Here's
going to
where the
deal with
mayor
this guy a
lives.
lot.
Yep,
I can
yep,
imagine. Yeah.
Yep. And then we went to the office. Same thing. Did a bunch of paperwork, this and that. Went out to the range, shot. Came back to the office, cleaned guns, and then drove around for another 2-3 hours. I drove this time, and then he rode in the passenger seat. And then, so probably about 6 hours into an 8-hour shift, and he'd go, "All right, bring me back to my house." And I go, "Okay." And I brought him to his house, and he goes, "All right, well, you start tomorrow at 9 and blah, blah, blah." He gave my whole shift, my whole layout when I was working and this and that. And he's like, "All right, any questions, give me a call." And I said, "Where's the jail?" And he said,
Of course.
"Aiken's that way. It's the big brown building on the left." And I went, "Seriously?" That was it.
Somebody will be there to help you with
That
the
was it.
paperwork.
That was it. That was it. And from that day forward, he never sat in the car with me another time. That was it. That was my FTO.
So without, identifying the guilty or the innocent, I'm pretty sure I know who your chief was at the time.
He is now, he's passed, but
Yes. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was-
Then it is definitely the same person I'm thinking
Yeah.
of. Yeah. He was a pretty easygoing fella.
I will tell he was though, but he was old school, which I kind of appreciated, but he was an old school, and I learned a lot from him. Like I tell everybody, like one of the things, when you're new into this career, there's certain things that people will say or certain things that happen, and they just kind of stick with you. And there was always, he always had these little one-liners that would always come out, and, he always, like, his big line was always, and the rest of the, he always had like the rest of the story, He's like, "Oh, I'll tell you the rest of the story about that guy." And you're like, "Okay." And then, it was always like, "Oh yeah, he's a good guy, blah, blah, blah." Well, someday I'll tell you the rest of the story about that guy, and then finally you'd go, "Well, tell me about it." You go, "Well, okay." And he'd give you this whole big long story about how they did something or whatever. But there was also a lot of good takeaways. Like the one thing he taught me was he had two pretty famous lines that stuck with me, especially working in a small town. And that one was, if they got it coming, they got it coming, but tie goes to the runner. And so
Tie goes to the
yep,
runner.
he just would say, if you're debating on whether you should or you should not tag that person, if they're a local, tie goes to the runner. But on the same note, right, if it's an arrestable thing, if it's a domestic, if it was something like that, his line was always, if they got it coming, they got it coming. And that always stuck with me. I was in small towns. It was like, yep, if they got it coming, they got it coming, And he would tell me, he's like, remember that guy you write a speeding ticket to? There's a good chance you're going to see him in the gas station later on. So make sure it's legit. Don't give him a reason to complain about it. Don't give him a reason to make a comment
Yeah.
one way or the other. And then the other thing he said was, you treat people like people until they give you a reason not to. And that's one of the big things my whole career, all through FTO, everything I did, they always were. You treat people like people till they give you a reason not to. And I always was like, I liked that. And so that always stuck with me.
Yeah. But that's policing in small town America.
That's what it was for sure.
And I remember him very well. I worked in that same area, not quite the same agency by any means, but I've got family, of course, that's up
Oh,
there.
yeah.
So I knew him very well, and I should say
He,
very well. I knew him pretty well.
he, once he um, kind of retired from law enforcement, he ran for county commissioner and like won by like the guy he was running against had been the county commissioner for their district. I think it's districts up there, but he'd been the county commissioner for years and years and years. And he said, I want to be a county commissioner. So he ran for county commissioner and just cleaned house on this guy. Did
Which,
minimal campaigning, but just it's because who he knew.
but it says a lot about how he treated people.
Agreed. Yeah.
Like if you're arresting somebody and that person's now voting for you for county commissioner,
Yeah. Yep.
you know what I mean?
And
That
the
just
years
says a
that he
lot.
was there and the time he put in and just his reputation with not only the community, but within the county. Like the fact that you're known that well within the district of what you're living in and have that kind of like, you carry that ability. The same thing though, like sheriffs up where when we started working up where we worked and where, and even currently, you know, these sheriffs are getting elected and it legitimately is. And I know you did an episode on the difference between sheriffs and troopers and, chiefs and stuff like that. But you get outside the metro and it is 100%. I mean, the people are voting for the sheriff and they're voting for the sheriff 100. You can sugarcoat it however you want, but it is 100% a popularity contest.
Oh, absolutely.
If you're not liked, you
Oh,
won't win.
absolutely.
And if you're liked, if you've done good things in the community, because you're not only impressing the old farmers, but you now have to impress all the young folks too. And if you've left a good enough impression, that's what gets, especially in these smaller counties, that's what's getting these sheriffs elected.
Oh, I've got I think I've talked about it on different episodes, but I've got a friend of mine who is the sheriff of a county that I'll keep nameless just because.
Yeah, to protect the innocent.
Yeah, but he when he ran for sheriff and he won, I happened to be going up to the area for some training, and I said, "Hey, let's grab dinner together." He's like, "Sure." And so we go out to this place, and it was just a local brewery, and I think we're having pizza or something, nothing fancy. And I looked at him, and you got to know this guy; he's a great guy. But I'm like, who the hell voted for you?
Yeah.
And he starts laughing, and he's like, I don't know.
Let alone unanimously.
Well, and it was really funny because I'm like, he's a great guy, but he'll tell you he kind of fell into it. He's like, I just decided to run. He didn't necessarily have all the skills,
Mhm.
and he told me, he's like, my job is to surround myself with people who know what they're doing.
Absolutely.
And listen to them.
Yeah.
I mean, now he's been sheriff for a while now. So, I mean, he's definitely graduated to, he knows what he's doing, but this was like before his first day in office as sheriff. And he's laughing. He's like, I don't know who the hell would have voted for me.
I will.
Great guy. Great guy.
I know we don't normally dime out agencies, but I did a short stint as a part-time sheriff's deputy with the Renville County Sheriff's Department. And when I got hired there, the sheriff there, Jerry Agri, had been there for many, many years. And Jerry was just an amazing guy, just like straight shooter. You knew where you stood with Jerry. There was no, you just knew. Old school, sheriff. But Jerry, again, born and raised Renville County, was known by everybody. And the gentleman that preceded him as the sheriff and is still currently the sheriff is Scott Habel. And when I got hired with the sheriff's office, Scott was my FTO. And I will tell you, um, I mean, 1000% the right guy for the job. He was so good with people and just, I mean, he had the ability to tell you to go F off and it would be 5 minutes before you realize you got told to F off. I mean, he just had a way with words. He was good with people, but just one of those guys where just generally, you couldn't hate him. Like, even if you wanted to hate him for doing his job, you couldn't hate him because he just was that likable of a guy. It just, just all around one of those guys that just, if you had a complaint, he'd listen to you. If it was legit, he'd address it. But he came up, he was, but just, and that's probably why he's been the sheriff as long as he has, because well known within the sheriff's office, but also just one of those guys where, like, if you got, if the guy's fair and he's good to the people, I mean, just how do you vote against the guy, But yeah, but by all means, when you look at people and you go, like, just kind of the opposite of what you said, when you look at people and go, he's that guy when he was my FTO and he was just a road deputy and we were, doing the deputy thing together. He's those guys you look at and go, this guy could be the sheriff. And, fast forward, 7, 10 years down the road, sure enough, he's the sheriff and been the sheriff for a while. But just, it's amazing that you run into those people that are just, some people fall into it and, out of default, some people run for sheriff, or, even put in for, chief's jobs, and they get in and realize they're over their head. It's not something they should do. Some people, um, don't like to surround themselves with others. And so their faults truly do come to light. And we all have faults. I mean, that's, I mean, the name of the game is, if you get into one of those positions, you surround yourself by people that, I mean, I always said that is, if I can, I can own a business, but the people around me make my business go day to day, not me. I
Right.
mean, but same thing. I mean, I think sheriffs are the same way. And the problem is I think, again, as you pointed out in the previous episode, people who are sheriffs get elected by the people. Uh, I think more police chiefs could take a lesson from that, because I think, if you're, and again, small towns, big towns, doesn't matter. But if you're doing your job, I think that people have the confidence in your ability to do the job. If you're not doing your job, I mean, we vote for council members, we vote for mayors. Why wouldn't we vote for police chiefs?
But here's the thing. So if you look at a police chief, the police chief generally either reports to the council or to the city administrator, right?
Correct.
If they're reporting to a city administrator, does the council really have any idea what's going on with the chief? I would suggest not.
I would,
Because that
a buffer.
communication, they have no idea. They're just getting the filter from what the city administrator is reporting to them.
And I think it depends on the city, right? I mean, smaller cities, yes. I mean, I think, you get some of these smaller cities that I mean, you know, I read a stat. This was years ago, so I'm sure it's not accurate anymore. But I read a stat somewhere that said like 86% of all law enforcement agencies in the state of Minnesota have 10 or less cops.
That's probably
And again,
accurate.
I'm sure it's not. I mean, it was years ago when I saw that, but I'm sure it's got to be still semi accurate.
Well, that's probably nationally too, though.
Yeah. So those chiefs, though, they're known by the council. They're known. I mean, whether they report directly to the city administrator, they know what's going on. Now, once again, this is where you and I have that perspective because we've worked outside the metro, and I think there's a lot of cops that they born and raised in the metro. They get hired in the metro. They work the metro. I mean, they don't know that effect of working for a small town or working for a small county or things like that, or being in a rural area as a state trooper. Like, they don't know what that's like. And so while I agree with you when you get in the metro, right, that a lot of these metro agencies, if that chief is reporting to the city manager, yeah, there's a huge buffer there that, is getting, that the council may or may not have a true understanding of what's going on. But, so but if you're a smaller agency, I think the city definitely has a pulse. Whether you report to the city manager or the city administrator or not, I think the council still has a pretty good grasp on what's going on.
Yeah. Well, let's shift gears and get back to our what we're
You
supposed to
were
be talking
you
about.
were you were talking about your
Technology.
technology.
Well, and somehow we got off onto some other things, but it's all interesting, But it's so when we look at technology now, I mean, what have you seen? Uh, Biggest advancements in technology. What are we really doing now that maybe we weren't doing 20 years ago when we
Well, for
started?
sure, 20 years ago. I mean, I think for sure. Like again, so I've been out since 2023, and I think just since 2023 to current, I think there's a lot of
Mm, that's true.
a lot of advancements that have come out that I know in your agency, there's a lot of tech that goes on where I came from that we hadn't quite caught up to that
Yeah.
level of stuff yet. But I think there's a lot of advancements in less lethal. I think there's a lot of advancements in you know I mean I remember there was the big push for the LPRs, the license plate readers,
Hmm.
and I remember there was a way back, mid, 2015, 2016, there was a big federal grant out. All these agencies had these license plate readers on their cars. And the technology is fantastic as far as what it does and things like that. But once those grants ran out, agencies, I think, started to tally up the cost, and then they started buffering the cost versus the expense of the equipment and to
Right.
maintain it and to, upload the software and to maintain the accuracy of what that LPR was doing. And I think that really, I don't think you see a lot of them anymore. Not
Yeah.
in the law enforcement sector. I'm not saying that they don't exist.
Right. Right.
I think there's a lot. I mean, I have a good friend who used to work in Minnesota and now works down in Texas. And he works for a fairly affluent agency, a lot of higher end
I work I
residents.
work for one too. We
Yeah.
just don't spend it.
Yeah. Right. But
Oops, I'm getting fired now.
he was telling me that the agency he works for, they have LPRs at every entrance into their community.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so every vehicle that comes in and every vehicle goes out, he said at any given point they can go into their dispatch center, and he said we can do a print off of what plates entered and what plates left and
Yeah,
what
we
ones.
don't see who's leaving necessarily because we don't care who's leaving. But
Well,
we have most of our thoroughfares coming into our city covered.
yeah. See, and that's yeah. And realistically, I think versus having them mounted on the cars and
Mhm.
just driving around, because who knows if you're going up residentials or you're going through. I think that idea, I mean, technology wise, I think is a fantastic idea. I think things,
Yeah, so if you look at my agency, for instance, so we use Flock. Yeah, that's a popular, very well known um, vendor for law enforcement. So not only do we, but several agencies that surround us have these LPR. So we get an alert if there's a stolen plate, a stolen car, somebody with warrants, revoked driver, all these different, violations. We can individually, my profile, I can set up what I want to get notified for. Me personally, in my position, I don't care if somebody's revoked,
right,
right? Because that's not my role as an investigator. However, maybe our patrol officers want those alerts,
correct,
so they'll get it either to their MDC, if they're signed in there, or they can get it on their work issued phone, and they'll know, hey, this stolen vehicle is eastbound on this, at this intersection, and they'll flood that area to try to find that vehicle. So I mean, that's flock technology is
that's crazy. Yeah,
insane, and there's agencies all over. I mean, I can run a plate and tell you, has this plate been found in Georgia?
right,
If there's an agency, that plate, hit on in Florida, there'll be a trace of that. So that's really interesting. And then there's other technology. I mean, if you look inside the squad cars, for instance, we have pepper ball,
yep,
we have less lethal 40 millimeter. We have obviously tasers. We have all these intermediate weapons. I mean, all of our squads, well, not quite yet, but we're moving in the direction that all of our squads are going to have shields,
yep,
and they have mounts on them. They're mounted on the door. So easy access. They're not in cases or anything like that. So the officers can grab. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot of technology in just the last few years, like you had even said.
Well, and even to the standpoint of things like radio encryption. Um, I mean,
Oh, that really pisses people off,
there
doesn't it?
was always the days of oh yeah, but it was always the day of Scannerland.
Hmm.
I mean, was I and you and I definitely have been through this, especially when we worked outside the metro. But I mean, there wasn't a house I walked into when I was working outside the metro that didn't have a scanner
Oh, my
going
mom,
off. Oh yeah,
my mom had one.
yeah.
So the agency that I worked for up north, um, my mom didn't live in the same county. My mom and dad, they didn't live in the same county, but if they were close enough that they could hear the towers. So they would listen to me working all night long. And that used to drive me nuts because my mom would be like, "Hey, I heard or I'm like, "What are you doing? Are you just
Yeah,
sitting there listening to the radio?"
yeah,
I remember there was a time that I was in a physical fight on the side of a roadway. I think I may have talked about
yeah,
this before when the trooper is the one that came.
yeah.
Well, that same incident, for those who didn't hear that episode, first of all, shame on you. Go back and listen to it because it's funny.
That's right. Yeah,
but that same incident, that trooper, it was like 12 minutes, and my mom was freaking out. She'd called me. We had cell phones, but that was like pay by the minute back then,
hmm
and there were like messages on my phone. I'm just checking to see if you're okay. I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. But she had heard that
oh yeah.
whole incident unfold and was freaking out.
But
So
but I think again, back then when it was done as, I guess, entertainment,
yeah,
it was one thing.
boredom.
But then it turned into people showing up on your scenes, people showing up on your calls. It became unsafe. And so I think with the evolution, and here's the funny thing is that when I worked in southwestern Minnesota, we had a thing um, when I worked down there, and they called it DVP, digital voice protection. And so
What is that?
it was basically like a scramble. And so what they would say is if they had critical information, if dispatch had critical information they wanted to give to you, and
Like flick a switch?
yep,
Oh, interesting.
and they wanted to give it to you, but it wasn't something you could leave on all the time because it was just between you and the dispatcher. So it would be scrambled to everybody. And I mean, if you and I were car partners or work in the same agency, if you didn't reach down and push your DVP button, you couldn't hear what it was.
Oh, interesting.
Yep.
I had
And
no
so
idea.
and
So
this
it was
was
kind of like part-time encryption.
yeah, and this was back in 99, 2000. I mean, it wasn't so, but it was called DVP. And so the, dispatcher would get on and they'd say, whatever our badge numbers were, and and they'd say, "Can you go DVP?" And you go, "Sure." And then you'd basically it was one channel up, and then you'd had to push a button on the radio,
Activate it.
and that would activate it.
Be
And
like
then
1045 information on
yeah,
DVP kind of or
yep,
whatever.
yep. Or
Oh,
they come
wow.
back and say, "Hey, they just so you know, so and so is back at the residence." But they would use names and but it was information you didn't want out
Interesting.
in scanner land. But like I said, the downside of it is it was very one sided. It was between you and the dispatcher, or if you wanted to hear, agencies, responding to this call, can you go to DVP, which would meant you had to go one channel up and then you had to hit the button and then whoever was in that position. But the problem is you couldn't scan anything else. You couldn't hear anybody else talking. If my radio was on DVP and you tried to talk to me, I couldn't hear you.
All right, right.
So
Now,
it wasn't,
now you fast forward to today, and if you look at social media, if like on Facebook,
oh yeah.
speaking of Facebook, you can follow us at facebook.com/we are under investigation. I had to throw that in there because it thought of me, or I thought of it right away. But anyways, if you look at like Facebook, for instance, and people are going absolutely insane at the fact that the county that you and I both worked in, I mean, you worked in and I currently work in, is all encrypted all the time.
Oh yeah, when
And
they did that,
people are
people
going
lost their mind.
nuts.
Yes, they lost their mind. I remember when that, because I was still working when that happened, when they flipped that switch and said all agencies have to have encrypted radios, people were losing their minds.
Oh, absolutely. And to me, and maybe it's because I'm a cop and I maybe think of it differently, but it's a safety issue.
Oh, it's huge.
People are insane these days.
Mhm.
People will come to calls if they hear addresses, they will show up. And in the day and age of the instability that we have, for lack of better terms, with some residents, scramble is good,
Mhm.
and then you hear people like, well, we have the right because it's taxpayers' money. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. You do. You just don't need it live.
Yeah, I always say when that argument came out, again, that was probably about, I don't know, 10 years ago, maybe, plus or minus when that came out.
Probably a little minus, but yeah.
Um, but I remember thinking, like, what if you just did a delay? I mean, if you want it, right? Because that was the argument, right?
Yep.
We have the right, and our taxpayer monies pay for this technology. Da, da. I said, make it a 5-minute delay that you can hear it, but everything you're hearing happened 5 minutes ago. You're still going to hear it. It's still going to be it's not going to be crazy, but put a delay on it, and then at least that way, if it's critical stuff that's going on, it allows the agency that's responding or dealing with the critical incident to deal with it properly and not have to worry about any backlash from it. But I think, yeah, I mean, so there was that. I mean, that's the big thing, technology that's come out. I mean, there's a lot of other, like, I think, like, I define it as like cool technology, right? So, like, I thought when we came out with drone software, I thought that's cool, that we can launch drones. And then we came out that we're launching drones from our squads. And now I know with your agency, you have the technology to remotely launch drones from your agency,
Yep. Yeah.
which is,
I can launch it from my basement
yeah,
at my house if I wanted to.
that's,
I've got the connections.
but I mean, that amount of tech that's there now is just, I mean, that to me is, especially from the officer safety standpoint, to be able to say, hey, this is what's going on, and you have the ability to launch, or anybody has the ability to launch that technology and be able to send it to that area and say, here's what we're seeing right now, real time. I'm not having to wait for a helicopter anymore. I'm not having to wait for, get to the top of the highest building so you can see what, like that.
Well, and I can tell you right now that we're launching, specifically me, because I'm in charge of our DFR program right now. Um, I'm launching when State Patrol can't.
Right.
They can't because of weather, or they can't because of rain. So DFR is drone as a first responder. So for those who aren't familiar with this technology, it's basically that we have a box. It's called a dock. We have a dock on the roof of our police department, and if there's a call for service that requires, some kind of emergency response or something that would benefit the officers if I was to get there, it's like Google Maps where I type in the address and, I go 123 Main Street, hit enter, and it plots the course and everything. And all I do is I have to hit, basically press a button, and the UAV, we call them UAVs because drones are scary. But
Oh, yeah. I didn't think they were, but okay.
the UAV or the drone will automatically launch at a predetermined height, and it will fly to that address. And I will tell you, just because I run the stats all the time, probably 80% of the time, if not more, we're on scene overhead with the live video feed that's broadcasting to the squad cars, if they desire. We're on scene before any officer gets there, so we can do a real quick overview. Hey, yeah, the house is on fire. The house isn't on fire.
Right.
The bad guy is on scene. Oh, he's leaving. He's going north. I mean, there's some very great scenarios that have been very beneficial to our officers that we've been on scene first. So that's a piece of technology. Now the agency to the south of us now has it. I know another agency to the north of us is getting it very soon. We're on a pilot program, so I don't know if we're going to keep it or not, but we're testing it for a company, and it's great. I mean, it's great technology, and I think it's going to become more standard, especially as the prices come down. Right now, it can be pricey, because you're buying the hardware, so you're buying the dock, you're buying the drone, and then you have to buy the software to manage it,
Right.
and that's actually where the
One with
hardware is not cheap either. But
with anything else, though, right? Well, you got to maintain it, and within maintaining it, you have to update it and make sure the software is updated, and make sure as technology changes, you're upgrading that technology and things like that. But when we talk about things like when we go back to like, plat books to drones you can launch from your basement, like
Yeah,
there's
that's
there's
crazy.
there's your transition in law enforcement technology. And I mean, and again, I think it's great. Same thing. I mean, you talked about like the less lethal stuff. I mean, 40 mils. I mean, those were, I mean, back in our day, those were reserved for SWAT teams. And I mean, you didn't see a 40 mil. I mean,
And they were called grenade launchers.
yeah, you
I
did.
mean, in the media, they'd always call them grenade
Yeah.
launchers.
And we never would see those, and now, I mean, I know
Every squad.
my agency, when I was leaving, I mean, we had 50% of our fleet had them in there, and my chief and my sergeant were actively budgeting to make sure every car had one in there because we just saw the benefits of them, and as far as the less lethal capacity. And
If you simply look at one of our squad cars now, though, the technology change, especially, I mean, even since, the last time I drove a squad car on a regular basis, I mean, we are now half cages in the back seat because there's so much equipment now.
yeah,
Not only are the trunk lids full of stuff, one in the back of the SUVs, but now we're starting to put them in that second row,
yeah.
in locked compartments and stuff. But I mean, it's
But I think that's part of it too. Is, I mean, again, right you know, back in the days of when we started our careers, everything was cars,
right,
right?
right.
Crown Vics, Chevy Caprices, Chevy Impalas. I mean, everything was cars, Dodge Chargers, like everything was cars, cars, cars. And then all of a sudden, the auto manufacturers kind of came out and said, "Yeah, we're not making these cars. We're not making cars anymore." And so agencies like law enforcement agencies, we were forced to go to SUVs.
But I think it was good though,
Oh, I think it was fantastic.
because now your AEDs and all your temperature sensitive equipment is now
Yeah.
in the same compartment.
Well, and I think,
It was a good change.
but I think it was a fantastic change because it forced agencies to go, we have to buy SUVs. Because before, if you went, oh, I don't want to get a car, I want to get an SUV, agencies or, city councils were going, well, how much more is that?
How much gas?
How does that look if our officers are driving around Chevy Tahoes? Well, when you realize that, people, because they don't stop to think, state contract, extremely discounted pricing, things like that.
Well, from an equipment guy, I mean, because
Mhm.
that's your business,
Mhm.
you probably have a little insight into this. Now, I'm told that the price between, again, we're not with sedans anymore, but it was only a couple $1,000s difference, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was
So you're going from a front wheel drive sedan to a 4-wheel drive SUV.
you could get, I mean, if you wanted to compare apples to apples, an all-wheel drive Ford Taurus, because you could get them in either front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive.
Oh, you could. I didn't.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. You know what? We did have some. Yeah, we did.
So
have
if you compared an all-wheel drive Ford Taurus and you compared it to a all-wheel drive Ford Explorer, the difference was about, when they first came out, $3,000. And then everybody was like, oh, $3,000. But I get it from a standpoint of a larger agency. If they're buying 20 of them,
Yeah. No, I get that.
I mean, you add that all up, that's 2 extra cars maybe you could get instead of an SUV. But I think it was a good thing when agents, and again, I don't think whether audio manufacturers did it on purpose or not, but I think it was a good thing when they came out and said, no, we're just making SUVs, because now it made agencies, like you were just saying, it made agencies look and say, well, wait a minute, we can carry all this extra stuff now. And now wait a minute, we can put drawers in the back, and we can put all of our equipment in these drawers, and we can mount stuff in the back, like, that isn't going to get cold and can withstand the climate. And hold on a second, now we start doing this. And so all these things that, we normally were having to call in for because you had to keep it at the PD. Now we had the room and the capacity and the climate to keep it there. So
I'll check with my chief and see if he's okay with me taking a couple photos and without our agency markings. But I mean, I will admit I'm super impressed with all the stuff that our squads have.
yeah, I think it's like, I think that's where things are going. I mean, I'm curious, right? Again, so like obviously I'm out of the out of the career, and you're on your way, but it's interesting, where where technology's come. When we started out, like, you and I first started talking, that when we first got into our career, we didn't have computers in our cars, and we've come from the extreme of computers in our cars all the way to technology.
We have to have
Well,
computers.
we have to have computers, and we've got we've got infrared on our spotlights.
I've seen that.
Yep.
IBIS
If
finger for
IBIS fingerprint and
people,
it's
who
wireless, I can walk up to anybody in any building and just take your fingerprint. And if you've ever been arrested, I can find out who you are within minutes.
I just want to clarify that for people who are listening, because I don't assume everybody's a cop on this.
Mhm.
And matter of fact, I hope it's not that way. But an IBIS is basically a portable fingerprint scanner
Mhm.
that compares whose ever thumbprint, fingerprint that you're taking to a known database of people who have already previously been arrested. So I want to clarify that. It's not like it's going to check all the fingerprints of ever, like somebody, like teachers, for instance, they have to get their fingerprints
Yeah.
scanned. It's not scanning that database. It's scanning an arrest database.
Correct. If you've ever been arrested, then and more than likely and just so there's clarification so people understand, like I said, for the non-law enforcement that listen, chances are people that we have come in contact with that don't want to give us their name and date of birth, or they don't want to ID themselves. There's a reason why.
Oh yeah.
Typically, that reason why is they probably have warrants because they've been previously arrested. So this is where IBIS comes in, and it's where IBIS is nice because, and again, you can it's reading looking for fingerprints. Now, if you run into somebody who just doesn't want to be ID'd and they've never been arrested before, it literally is going to come back and say nada. There's going to be nothing that's going
Right.
to come back. No record found.
But I had one of the first IBISs in our department back in the day. I mean, so I've been off patrol for 10 years. So I mean, that tells you how long they've been around. I loved it because man, oh man, you know how many people, I mean, so many people, like when they're in trouble,
Oh yeah.
just, you're not so and so, you're actually so, oh, and they do like the head of, the head hanging of shame.
Yeah.
They're like, oh yeah, okay.
Well, again, that's where I will say this is where my boss was, my chief and my sergeant were really, really good because again, the agency I retired from was at the time we were still a small agency, but, that type of technology, when I walked in and said, can we get one of these? And the bosses were like, yes, we see the benefit, even though there's an expense that goes with it. The benefit outweighed the expense, and they were like, yep, let's get one, let's
Oh
get
yeah.
two. And I don't know how many the agency has now, but I know when I left, we had two for sure, maybe three.
Yeah. I think we have 3 or 4 for ours, but they're always deployed. I mean,
Yeah.
there's always one on the street. It's interesting because I remember the pilot program that came with, or that came from, the county got like some federal grant
Correct.
initially, but they were big. They look like portable vacuums. Do you remember those?
Yeah, well, I do because that's where our first one came from. Is it was one that was
A county grant.
it was a county
Yeah.
one that
Yeah.
was.
So ours was my first one that I had, and you had to pair it. Remember you had to
Yep.
pair. Oh, that was
Yep.
oh.
Yep. You had to wait for it to link up.
But
to
wasn't
the
it like a
computer.
Palm Pilot that it actually connected to? It was something weird. It was like a phone that's like nobody used.
So that was the first ones that came out.
Oh, I
We didn't
know.
have those.
Oh yeah, that's what.
So
we
the
had.
first one we had was the handheld one, but it was huge. Though it was like like a mini one of those like mini baseball bats, or those little hand
Those shop
vacuums.
vacs.
Yeah, they're
those,
huge.
Yeah, those handheld ones.
Yeah, but I will say, I mean, they were still. It was still cool.
Oh, it worked. It was
Yeah.
fantastic. And remember, like the second version came out, and it showed their photos.
Yes.
That was cool.
So that's the version that I had in my squad.
Oh, those were nice. And then it would come on your screen.
Yep.
Because what we did was we Bluetoothed it to the MDC.
Correct. Yep.
And then, oh man, see, now I'm getting excited about the old days.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure, and I know there was a new version. So, like I said, I retired in 2023, and I know I didn't see it, but I know that there was a new version that was supposed to be coming out for your department's smartphone, where they would use your finger on your phone, and you'd walk up and put their finger on your phone, and basically was your phone became your work phone became your IBIS.
Ooh, that must not have taken hold, because I don't remember getting.
I think it's expensive.
Oh, okay.
I think IBIS they didn't want to convert everything over. I think they wanted everybody to relaunch with new software, new this, new. It wasn't just kind of springboarding off their existing platform.
Oh, okay.
It was all new platform, all new investments. And I think a lot of agencies were like, we'll stick with what we got.
So here's an interesting technology thing. What are your thoughts on all these police agencies jumping on social media now? Facebook. I mean, there's agencies that are on TikTok now. I mean, they're on X. I mean, they're all over the place. I'll throw it out there that I've got I've got kind of mixed feelings about it.
I I guess I guess I share your same, and I think probably most cops share your same exact feelings. Is I think there's mixed feelings. I think there are some benefits to it. I think, like I said, the agency, my agency, when I retired, we were just getting started on social media stuff. But I will say the one thing that I appreciated about our agency is that um, my my boss was very much about keeping it to an informational situation and not a entertainment situation. So I think if it's not that there's not a platform for it, right? I mean, if you're doing things in your community and you're doing things that you want to show that we are, a kinder, gentler law enforcement, and we're, we're out in our communities and we're doing these things like that. If that's something that you need to bolster, then I think that's a good platform to do it. I, I mean, I don't, same thing. How do you create the image? I mean, I guess again, it's that twofold, right? How do I create the image that we are not going to tolerate certain things if every social media post are a bunch of our cops dancing around the parking lot? I mean, how do you command respect and authority for what we're out there trying to do? Um, if you're the guy out doing the such and such challenge,
And
it's
that's where I'm at. I'm like, look, it's strictly for informational. I've zero issues.
mhm,
But for me, it's a balance, right? Where do you balance the information and then but yet the community engagement
correct.
side of things without looking like a bunch of kids,
Yeah, I
or
agree.
you know what I mean?
I
Maybe
do
I
know what you
shouldn't say
mean.
it that way, but it's like,
But too, though, right? I mean, and just to the extreme, right? I mean, there's agencies out there, larger metro agencies, that are actually hiring people, like they're employing people to do nothing but social media and community engagement.
oh yeah,
Like that's their job.
we've got them. We've got two that they're full time positions. They're not sworn officers, but
Mhm.
they have two community engagement officers, I think is what their term. They're not police officers. They're not sworn,
Right.
but they're
Like a
two.
CSO.
Yeah, but they're two. I think that's actually the title is community engagement officers.
Mhm.
Well, but here's the other thing. Like, okay, this sounds really silly, but have you ever heard of Frank Sloop?
Yes.
Look at that guy,
Pinell County
Pinell County.
Sheriff's Office traffic unit. Yeah.
He is absolutely like insane, and he's so again. Not that I'm getting any credit for Frank Sloop, and I'm not necessarily name dropping him to name drop him,
Oh, I will name drop him.
but he is hilarious. But
Fridays,
yet
Fridays with Frank.
Fridays with Frank. And anybody who doesn't know, it's Frank Sloop, SLOUP. I may lose traffic to our website and our stuff, but this guy is worth watching
Yeah.
because he's like very honest about stuff. He's like, hey, well, if you weren't acting like a jackass,
Yeah. But see, I see. Here's the benefit. Here's the trade off with that though. One, he's got a a camera guy that follows him around, so everything is live, right? So it's not they're not editing anything at all. And the thing is if you watch most of his videos, it's enforcement.
yeah, it
He's
is.
writing citations or taking people to jail
Yeah, there's not many
on
verbal
almost
warnings.
every interaction.
Yeah,
Well,
there's not
he's
many verbal warnings on
no,
his clips.
but so there's that where I go back to say I think that's where that compromise comes in is that here is social media that's promoting the Pinell County Sheriff's Office traffic unit. However, what it's promoting is don't speed through Pinell County because we're going to tag you.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're going to write you tickets. And and my favorite one is he walks up and I'm Deputy Slope, Pinell County Sheriff Traffic Unit. You're under arrest for criminal speed. And I was like, oh, if we had criminal speed in Minnesota,
Oh,
only if we had criminal speed.
I arrested a guy once for reckless driving.
Yeah, back when you could arrest people for non-target misdemeanors.
For
Yeah.
reckless driving.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I hauled him to jail, man. He was doing like 110. I'm like, you're going to jail.
But you see, but when you bring up like that social media side of it, right? So that's not him out doing, crazy TikToks, right? That's him out doing enforcement. I mean, you can see the comedic value of what it is, but if you look past the comedic value of what it is, he's citing almost everybody he has contact with. Like he's walking up, whoosh,
And I think
paper in
that,
hand.
and I'm pretty sure, well, I'm very confident that that's their official county channel, that he's doing that
It
stuff on.
absolutely is.
But he's got a second one too that he's throws his opinions. I'm pretty sure that's not just because of
Yes.
some of the stuff that I've heard him say.
Well, and if you notice too, when he does that one, he does, and what he does, though, if you notice, he never wears anything that has to do with any type of
Correct.
law. He doesn't even wear anything that has anything to do with law enforcement. He's wearing a white T-shirt, and
Making comments on
yeah, yep,
videos
yep,
basically. It's
and
like he's right.
yeah. But I see him. But again, I think that's that fine line between. I think there is a if you're going to be if you're a sheriff's office or a police department and you're going to do same thing. Like I think. I believe that it's the Florida Highway Patrol has a YouTube channel, and they did one a while back where they had seized a Corvette C6, and they just gorgeous car, and they striped it all up in lights and everything like that. And everybody was like, "Oh, sure, it's just a show car." They did a stream of videos of this car out, literally pounding traffic, like it's assigned to one of their like heavy
I was
ticket.
going to say they probably gave it to their go-getter.
Yep, they did.
Yeah,
And he was like, "Yep," and he was out there, and then so that it's again, I don't know, I haven't looked in a while, but for a while it was on their social media where they were posting. I think they tried to do a spin-off of what Pinal County was doing, but he's out there just hammering traffic, and
Yeah.
it's like, but I think that shows, right? So now we're not showing, yeah, we seized this car, now it's just a show car, you know,
Oh,
it's
use it.
we seized it and we're using it. So
Speaking of though, I mean, as we kind of come to a close here, social media.
social media is a good thing. We have our YouTube channel. We're on X, we're on TikTok, we're on Spotify, we're on Facebook. Our website is
Yep.
now up and running.
Yeah, the website's up and running. So if you want to come visit us, and hopefully you do, all of our podcasts are on there. We're gonna keep changing it up. So if you guys have any suggestions, let us know. There's a contact us right there. If you have any suggestions for guests or things you want to see or things you want us to talk about, but our website is weareunderinvestigation.com. It is up and running officially. I love it.
And I like it because I think I've had a bunch of people reach out to me and make comments about how can they hear our podcast? How can they access this stuff? And while we have all these things, sometimes, we've talked about this before, sometimes search wise, you got to do a little digging to find us. But I think the nice thing about the website is if you go on the website, click one of the hyperlinks, it'll bring you right to the podcast. The podcasts are listed on there. You can kind of search to the different episodes, pick and choose which ones you want to watch or listen to. So I think the website's been a huge addition to our
Yeah, it's a one-stop shop.
absolutely.
Actually. So it's something that was needed that we weren't quite there yet, but we are. But join us obviously on our TikTok stuff. Go to weareunderinvestigation.com. Everything is there. All the links to all the different socials are there. But again, as always, we thank you for spending an hour with us. We appreciate it, and keep listening. And again, if you've got any suggestions, reach out. Any comments?
Let us know.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.